Dennis, tell me about the control gates at the north end of the lake. They control the lake level within a certain range.
Yes, they do. Cayuga Lake is the lowest of all the Finger Lakes, and it's also an immediate watershed for 800 square miles of land that drains into Cayuga Lake, and like a supplementary watershed, an additional watershed for Seneca Lake, which also has several hundred square miles of water that drains into it, and Cayuga Lake, which has several hundred miles of water that drain into it. Cayuga Lake flows into Seneca Lake flows into Cayuga. It doesn't really add an awful lot of flow into Cayuga, because as it comes out the Cayuga-Seneca barge canal, it makes a turn and flows north with the rest of the water toward the Seneca River and into the Erie Canal.
Right. Right.
At that point, there's a lock there for boats to make the elevation change from Cayuga Lake to the Seneca River.
Yeah, so-called mudlock. Yeah.
Mudlock.
Yeah.
And Cayuga Lake is, I don't know, 9 feet higher, I think, or something than the locking through.
Uh-huh.
Well, next to that lock, the lock itself doesn't control the lake level. There's a series of what they call butterfly dams, or butterfly valves that are, there's 6 or 8 butterflies that can be opened to different degrees to let water out of the lake and into the Seneca River. That's how they functionally control the level. How they arrive at where they want the lake level has to do with 100-year data.
Uh-huh.
And with that data, they try to regulate the level of the lake. People build houses at certain levels around the lake, and
Right.
there's historic data as to how high or low the lake was, and that's changed over 100 years of regulating the lake, but not significantly. So there is some different data points where they're starting from. But generally, on Cayuga Lake in the summer, the normal, what they call the normal pool level, is 382.7 or 8 feet. That's about the average.
Mm-hmm.
At 382.7 or 8, there's a lot of the inlet in Ithaca that is unnavigable because of the shoaling and the silt buildup.
Right.
Even at the normal pool level, there's areas you have to stay away from or your boat will be stuck in the bottom. Expensive and, hazardous. There are areas, of course, where you can navigate through with a boat that has a 5-foot or so draft in the normal pool. But as soon as the lake is lowered more than about 6 inches, then that becomes a bigger problem, because these boats are just scooting along the bottom here at normal level.
Mm-hmm.
You lower it 6 inches, and now they're 4 or 5 inches into the mud, and that's what they're traveling through, difficult.
Jeez.
And so at this time of year, we're talking now in October 23rd, they've been lowering the lake for a month. They lower it in anticipation of September rains, mostly September and early October rains. And we had a significant rainfall 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
5 inches of rain. And it would have brought the lake up to a near flood stage had they not had it lowered to some degree. So they were right about the 100-year data in this particular fall case. But then when the rain stopped and they were able to move the water out, they've now lowered it. It's about 11 inches below normal pool. Now it's a real problem for all of the marinas along the Cayuga Inlet, for marinas all through through Cayuga Lake.
Mm-hmm.
We have difficulty getting boats into the slips to pull them out of the water because our slips haven't been dredged in 25 years. And or the whole inlet hasn't been dredged in 25 years. So therefore, when you make a big enough change like that, it creates a huge problem to navigation. Our argument has always been that the Erie Canal remains open for navigation up to November 15th every year.
Mm-hmm.
So people can travel from this lake into the Erie Canal, down to the Hudson River, and out to the ocean, or west to Buffalo and into the Great Lakes, or boats can come from there and back into this lake, and people can move around the waters until November 15th.
Right.
So our argument has always been, at November 15th, when the Erie Canal closes, that's the date that everybody should be aware of here, that they can drop the level of the lake to prevent snowpack and flood control and all the rest. Because it's such a game of inches, when they drain the lake, when they lower the lake in September and October, when there's still boats coming up and down and using it all the time. I run a commercial vessel on the lake, passenger vessel, school vessel. We're still using the waterways.
Right.
My boat draws about 5 feet. There's places I cannot go if I'm not careful, or one of my captains is operating the boat and is not real careful about where we are. We can go aground. Going aground is reportable to the Coast Guard. It's a problem. I used to be in the towing business, and we towed people off these sandbars all the time in the inlet. It does damage to boats. It costs people extra money. It makes it much harder for the marinas to do their work in the fall.
Right.
So we begged the powers that be in the Canal Corp to leave the lake within 6 inches of its normal pool level. They don't seem to need to heed that call from us marinas. We have call-in campaigns yearly to try to get them to leave it alone. Or, I mean, we don't mind that they lower it a few inches to take care of a bad rain situation.
Right.
But there's a limit, and the limit shouldn't be exceeded until we're out of navigation season.
Yeah.
And around here, we try to pretty much pull it off by the first week of November. We pretty much say, okay, everybody's out of the pool by then.
Right.
But like I say, the Erie Canal's still open until November 15th, and you can still travel anywhere in the world from here up until that date. But if you have a sailboat with a 6-foot draft, you can't do it.
Right.
They're stopping. They're saying, okay, the canal's you but we're not going to let you use it because we're going to drop the water level too far. It's frustrating at best.
Right. Right. Why do they let the water down so much in the wintertime? What's special about the winter?
Well, the winter brings snow, and snow builds up over time. It can build up in the woods, especially where the sun doesn't get to it to melt it back like it does on the roads or the roadsides. It builds up in the woods to great depths over a winter. If we have a winter with a significant snowfall, you can find 3 feet or more of snowpack in the woods, and that's over hundreds and hundreds of square miles of woodlands.
Right.
When you get a January thaw or February, and all that snowpack leaves in a short period of time, it just saturates the ground to the point where the ground can't take anymore, and all of the water rushes to the lowest point, which is this lake.
That happened last January. Yeah.
Yep, and it fills the lake up to flood conditions, and it takes weeks to lower it a little at a time to get it back in the kind of shape it needs to be for the spring rains and the subsequent maybe March or April snowpack melt. We have some significant snowfalls in March and April that add up to a lot more of that flooding potential in the spring.
I remember '93 when we had the big blizzard in March, and then the wettest April on record.
Yep.
And we got flooded.
Well, we did get flooded. And it was the current agency that had taken over the hydrology of the lake and the controls of the levels, and they had a little bit to learn. They had a learning curve.
I see.
They hadn't reacted quite the same way that the Department of Transportation, who had run it for a number of decades, had in the past. So they were kind of caught short and created a little more flooding that maybe than needed to be because they didn't have the lake levels right.
Right. What agency is running it now?
It's the Thruway Authority is the overall agency. It's the New York State Canal Corporation, which runs under the umbrella of the New York State Thruway Authority.
Right.
So it's the New York State Canal Corp that runs it. And there's a gentleman that's the head of the hydrology of that. His name is Howard Goebel. And Howard's the person I talk to on the phone when I call up with my frustrations.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dennis.
You're welcome.